Hello Mila, hello Jack. Hello everybody else who's watching, and welcome to Story Time with Grandad. Today's book is from Paddington Bear, and it is Paddington at the Tower. Soon after Paddington went to live at number 32 Windsor Gardens, Mr. and Mrs. Brown gave him a basket on wheels. The Browns' house was near Portobello Road, where there was a large market, and every morning Paddington went there to do his shopping. After calling at the baker's, where he had a standing order for buns, he went on to see his friend Mr. Gruber, who kept an antique shop. Paddington liked Mr. Gruber's shop. It was so full of things it was like an Aladdin's cave. Every day Mr. Gruber made some cocoa and they had a snack together. One morning, however, Paddington had a big surprise. When he reached the shop, he found Mr. Gruber busy putting up his shutters. "It's Easter Monday, Mr. Brown," said Mr. Gruber, "and as it's such a nice day, I thought I would take you and Jonathan and Judy on a mystery outing." Paddington was very excited. He hurried back home to tell the others, and then he began making some marmalade sandwiches. He soon had so many he could hardly close the lid of his suitcase. Later that morning they set off. Mr. Gruber found them a seat right at the front of the bus so that he could point out the interesting sights on the way. They had been travelling for quite a while when Jonathan and Judy suddenly let out a cry. "I know where we're going," said Judy as they turned a corner. "It's the Tower of London," exclaimed Jonathan. Paddington had never been to the Tower of London before, and he was most impressed. It was much, much bigger than he had pictured. As they reached the entrance, a man in a strange uniform stepped forward to take their tickets. "That's one of the Beefeaters," whispered Jonathan. "They look after the tower." "They're really yeoman warders," explained Judy, "but they're called Beefeaters because in the old days they used to taste all the royal food to make sure it was safe to eat." Paddington raised his hat politely and then opened his suitcase. "Would you like one of my marmalade sandwiches?" he asked. "I expect it will make a nice change from beef." "A marmalade sandwich?" spluttered the Beefeater. He held the object up between his thumb and forefinger and stared at it as if he could hardly believe his eyes. But when he looked down again, Paddington had gone. After taking a look at the expression on the man's face, Paddington had picked up his suitcase and hurried after the others. Several sandwiches dropped out on the way, but by then he was much too upset to notice. Mr. Gruber hastily led them through an arch. When they were safely round the corner, he stopped beside a large cage. "This is where they keep the ravens, Mr. Brown," he said. "They've always had ravens here, and it's said that if they ever fly away, then the tower will fall down." Paddington peered at the empty cage. "Perhaps we better go soon, Mr. Gruber," he said anxiously. Mr. Gruber laughed. "I don't think there's any fear of its happening just yet, Mr. Brown," he said. "That tower looks very solid to me." He pointed towards a large black bird standing watching them. "Besides, there's at least one raven keeping an eye on things." "He looks as if he's got his eye on Paddington," said Judy. Next, Mr. Gruber took them to a room deep under the ground. "This is where the crown jewels are kept," whispered Judy. "They're made of gold and they are very valuable. That's why they're kept behind glass." Mr. Gruber showed them St. Edward's crown, the orb and the sceptre, and the ampulla and spoon for holy oil. They were all used by the Queen at her coronation, he explained. The crown has more than 400 precious stones, and it weighs nearly 5 pounds. Paddington's eyes grew larger and larger. He could see why no one wanted the tower to fall down. When they came out of the jewel house, Paddington noticed a strange thing. There were now 2 ravens watching him. A moment later 2 more arrived, and all 4 stared at him as he went past. Paddington gave them a hard stare back, but for once it didn't seem to have any effect. "Perhaps we'd better have our picnic outside by the river," said Judy, when she saw the worried look on Paddington's face. "They won't follow you out there." But the ravens did follow Paddington, and by the time they reached the gate, there were so many he'd nearly lost count. "And where do you think you're going with our ravens, young fellow me bear?" asked the beefeater in charge. "He's not going anywhere with them," said Jonathan and Judy. "They're going with him." "It makes no difference," said the man sternly. "I'm not letting them leave here and risk having the place fall down. That bear will have to stay in the tower until we've decided what's best." "Oh, crikey," groaned Jonathan. "Fancy Paddington being sent to the tower." Suddenly Mr. Gruber had an idea. "You know what?" he said excitedly. "I don't think it's Mr. Brown they're after at all. I think it's his sandwiches." Paddington gazed at Mr. Gruber in astonishment. "My sandwiches!" he exclaimed hotly. But Mr. Gruber was right. Sure enough, as soon as Paddington opened his suitcase, all the ravens gathered round and began pecking at the sandwiches. "All the years I've been here," said the beefeater, "I never knew ravens liked marmalade." He looked at Paddington with a new respect. "Perhaps you could give me your address, sir. Then, if any of our birds ever get lost, we can send for you. We may even be able to find you a special jar of marmalade to keep by you in case it's needed in a hurry." "Trust Paddington to get sent to the tower and then end up with a jar of marmalade," exclaimed Judy. Paddington looked at it happily. "If I'm to be a marmalade eater," he announced, "perhaps I'd better test it now, just to make sure." The end. Goodbye, Mila. Goodbye, Jack. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.